Hey heroes, and welcome to another uncanny episode of History of the Marvel Universe. This channel is sponsored in part by Patreon supporters. If you would like to contribute and vote in monthly polls that help decide what topics get covered on the channel, then you can sign up for an event of your choosing over at patreon.com/MaryMarvelite. The link is in the description below, along with other places you can find me. Previously on the channel, we looked at the origins of Rachel Summers, the daughter of Scott Summers and Jean Grey from the dystopian alternate timeline Reality 811, better known as the Days of Future Past. We talked about how she was enslaved by the cyborg known as Ahab and forced to hunt other mutants as one of his hounds, but ultimately escaped from that reality thanks to the power of the cosmic Phoenix Force and traveled to the Marvel Age in the Prime timeline, Earth 616, where she joined up with the X-Men of that era. At the same time, her memories were partially suppressed by the Phoenix Force, which remained dormant within her for a time. She had something of an existential crisis when she learned that in this timeline her mother was thought to be dead, and her father was married to an identical woman, Madelyne Pryor, meaning that in this world Rachel would never be born. She trusted her teammate Kitty Pryde with knowledge of her parentage, but found herself unable to reveal the truth to Cyclops. It is of course worth noting that Rachel previously knew Kitty's older counterpart, Kate Pryde Rasputin, back on Earth 811. In any event, Rachel accepted Scott and Madelyne's son, Nathan, as the baby brother she never had, and vowed to protect him, establishing a mind link with him shortly after his birth. Wanting to honor her mother and atone for her own past, she adopted the codename Phoenix and demonstrated the same cosmic powers that moniker would imply, as the Force awakened within her. But of course we covered the how and why of that in the previous Rachel Summers video, so check the link in the description if you haven't seen that one yet. When we last left off, Rachel was targeted by a manipulative six-armed sorceress, Spiral, who brought Rachel to another dimension where she was enslaved by the grotesque despot known as Mojo. We talked about them on the channel before as well, but Mojo is basically a twisted media mogul who uses television broadcasts to control the denizens of his home dimension. The details of Rachel's time on Mojo World are largely undocumented, but while there she evidently served as his star attraction. Meanwhile, the omniversal guardian Roma, who also happens to be the daughter of the legendary wizard Merlin, sought to bring together a team of specific heroes to combat a then upcoming threat and began manipulating things from behind the scenes. As part of this, Roma helped to re-establish a psychic link between Rachel and her former teammates, Kitty Pryde and Nightcrawler, which gave Rachel the strength to break free of Mojo's mind control and escape his twisted dimension. However, Mojo sent a pack of werewolves to retrieve her. These genetically engineered creatures were sentient canine humanoid hybrids that were created by scientists on Mojo World. At the same time, the omniversal Magistrix Opal Luna Saturnine, who also happened to be one of Roma's agents, declared that the Phoenix was a threat to reality and sent the interdimensional mercenary group TechNet to apprehend Rachel. While the werewolves and TechNet got in each other's way, Rachel was aided by Kitty Pryde and Nightcrawler, as well as the English heroes Captain Britain and Meggan Puchanu. This conflict happened while the other X-Men were thought to be dead, having seemingly sacrificed themselves to defeat a mystical entity called the Adversary, and so after saving Rachel, this group stayed together and became a UK-based team dubbed Excalibur. Taking up residence in Captain Britain's lighthouse on the west coast of England, this newly forged team went on to have a number of adventures, not all of which we'll be touching on today, so you'll just have to fire up the Marvel Unlimited app if you want to know even more of their exploits. During this time, Rachel continued to grow close with Kitty Pryde, and the two forged a lasting friendship. Amidst Excalibur's earliest adventures, there was the incident referred to as the Inferno, in which Madelyne Pryor was corrupted by demons from the hellish limbo dimension, aka Other Place, and became the villainous Goblin Queen. Long story short, this resulted in a demonic invasion of New York, during which the Goblin Queen plotted to sacrifice her own son in a ritual that would permanently link the two dimensions. Due to the mind link she established with him shortly after his birth, Rachel sensed this danger to Nathan's life and quickly rushed off to try and save him, with the rest of Excalibur following soon thereafter. Rachel briefly clashed with Madelyne Pryor, and while she was defeated and rendered immobile for a time, the combined efforts of the other X teams ultimately brought an end to the demonic invasion. In the aftermath of this, Rachel not only learned that the X-Men were alive and that Nathan had been saved, but that this timeline's Jean Grey had returned as well. Although with Jean becoming a surrogate mother to Nathan in the wake of Madelyne's death, Rachel decided not to reveal her existence to her right away. On another adventure, Excalibur found a peculiar robot that Kitty named Widget. Soon they discovered that the robot could teleport itself and others through various dimensions when Rachel's powers inadvertently activated it, which kicked off a series of cross-time capers that the team got caught up in as they bounced around parallel worlds. What they didn't know at the time was that within Widget was actually the disrupted consciousness of the Kate Pryde from Rachel's original timeline. In previous videos, we talked about how in their final mission together, Rachel and Kate used a nuclear explosive to destroy the Sentinel facility where the Nimrod series was being developed. While Rachel escaped the blast when the Phoenix Force sent her back in time, Kate narrowly survived thanks to her intangibility powers. However, she was stricken with deadly radiation poisoning and captured by Rachel's former slave driver Ahab. Ahab and the Sentinels attempted to recreate the time warp that Rachel had escaped through by studying residual temporal energy that had been absorbed by Kate, but when the inhibitor collar used to restrain her failed, her powers caused the temporal portal to flare out of control, throwing her into the time stream along with the monitoring equipment that her mind was connected to. As a result, her consciousness was absorbed by the equipment before being sent to Earth 616, where it wound up in a robotic head built by the peculiar savant Tweedledope, who we haven't mentioned on the channel before specifically, but was a member of Mad Jim Jasper's Crazy Gang. Perceiving multiple realities simultaneously, Kate's consciousness brought Widget to life, endowing it with the ability to generate dimensional portals. However, her mind and memories were effectively buried within the machine as Widget reacted to the world around it as if it were a child. After the ensuing cross-time caper, Rachel and Excalibur returned to Earth, but were immediately confronted by Galactus, who also claimed that the Phoenix was a threat to reality and sought to eliminate it. Given the stakes, Rachel was actually willing to allow this, but the World Eater soon discovered that due to the Phoenix Force's connection to all life, completely draining it of energy would actually cause the universe itself to die, and Galactus was forced to abandon the idea of killing it. Although it is interesting to note that Galactus is apparently one of the few beings who is potentially capable of actually destroying the Phoenix Force in any kind of meaningful way. After that, there was an incident in which the spirit of the Franklin Richards of Earth 811, also known as Scrapper, manifested on Earth 616. As many of you are likely aware, Franklin is the superhuman son of Mr. Fantastic and the Invisible Woman, who was born before the Days of Future Past timeline branched off from the Prime Marvel Universe and thus existed in both realities. You may recall from previous videos that in their original timeline, Rachel and Franklin were a couple. However, he was killed by the Sentinels during a sudden and unexpected attack. As it turns out, at the exact moment of his death, Franklin's mind escaped to a point in time in which he felt safe, which brought him to Earth 616. But to maintain his form there, he was unknowingly draining energy from both Rachel and his younger self. He was followed there by the cyborg Houndmaster Ahab, but this foe was ultimately repelled back to his own time by the combined efforts of the Fantastic Four, the New Mutants, X-Factor, and the X-Men. In the midst of this whole conflict, Rachel Summers finally met the Earth-616 version of her mother, and both Jean and Scott learned who she really was to them, although Jean had difficulty accepting this at first. As for the future Franklin, he ultimately accepted his fate and allowed his spirit to dissipate, as failing to do so would have eventually drained both Rachel and his younger counterpart of life energy completely, dooming all three of them regardless. I'll note here that shortly after this there was an incident in which Apocalypse infected baby Nathan with a techno-organic virus, forcing Scott and Jean to let an enigmatic time traveler take him to the far future where he could be treated. That'll come up again later, but in the meantime Rachel returned to Britain and had yet more uncanny and often zany exploits as a member of Excalibur. During this time, Widget eventually began growing itself a robotic body, while the mind buried within slowly began to recover. Meanwhile, Rachel learned that her own jumbled and incomplete memories were caused by the Phoenix Force itself, and hoped that by forcing it into dormancy, it would allow her mind to heal. However, she was still in the process of recovering when the team came up against an ancient sorcerer named Necrom. This was actually the threat that Roma had foreseen, and the primary reason she had secretly orchestrated the formation of Excalibur. Alright, to explain further, in the distant past, amidst a rare dimensional alignment, Necrom attempted to achieve apotheosis by destroying the entire multiverse and harnessing the resultant energy, but was thwarted by his own students, Merlin and Farron, the latter of which was connected to the Phoenix Force at the time. I already talked about that conflict in the History of Captain Britain Part 1, so check that out for more details. The important thing for today is that after the initial scheme was foiled, Necrom ripped a fragment of the Phoenix out of Farron's body, combined it with a portion of his own life force, and bound it to a corpse hidden deep within the Earth, where it would eventually incubate into a sort of anti-Phoenix. Bringing us back to the story at hand, Necrom returned to Earth-616 when another multiversal alignment was imminent and succeeded in bonding with this anti-Phoenix. The site of the convergence was Captain Britain's lighthouse, which was actually an ancient tower built atop a dimensional interface, and so Necrom naturally came into conflict with Excalibur, as well as several of their allies, including Kylun, Micromax, Cerise, and even a descendant of Farron with the same name as his predecessor. While the heroes prevented a multiversal collapse, Necrom still intended on draining the Phoenix Force from Rachel, forcing her to once again unleash its power to fight back against him. The ensuing conflict between the Phoenix and the Anti-Phoenix threatened to destroy the universe around them, but in the end Necrom's ambitions would prove to be his own undoing, as he absorbed more power than his body was able to contain, causing him to explode into discorporate atoms that were scattered across infinity. Rachel would have died as well, however the Phoenix Force resurrected her and returned her comatose body to Earth, clad in the same costume that her mother wore as the Phoenix, rather than the Hound costume that she had been wearing. While the Phoenix Force was able to restore Rachel's body, it was unable to mend her mind or soul, and so not long after this conflict it took Rachel into space once again, keeping her safe among the stars while her shattered psyche recovered. Eventually awakening with her mind and memories fully restored, Rachel returned to Earth and reunited with Excalibur. She elected to go back to her original timeline so that she could use the power of the Phoenix to stop Ahab and the Sentinels once and for all. She was accompanied by the rest of Excalibur, who volunteered to help, and it was during this mission that she finally learned the truth about Widget, as Kate's subconscious finally awakened within it. In the end, they successfully reprogrammed the Sentinels to protect all life, whether human or mutant, and Ahab teleported away. However, as the heroes returned home, something went wrong in transit, and Captain Britain was lost in the Timestream. Still anchored to Earth 616 thanks to his love for his teammate and fiancée Meggan, he attempted to tap into Rachel's unique temporal energies as a way to return, but doing so would have caused them to switch places, and so Rachel resisted. Having finally found her place in this world, Rachel actually started to build a relationship with her mother's 616 counterpart, and even served as a bridesmaid when Jean and Scott got married. She was overjoyed over the possibility that she might yet be born into this timeline, and the fact that this reality's version of her parents accepted her. However, with lingering survivor's guilt from everything she had been through and Captain Britain still attempting to return through her, she ultimately decided to sacrifice herself by switching places with him, bidding farewell to her teammates and disappearing into the time stream. Rachel, or rather one potential version of Rachel, don't worry, that'll make sense later, landed in the late 37th century, about 100 years after the Earth was conquered by the immortal mutant Apocalypse. Seeking to oppose Apocalypse's tyrannical rule, Rachel began gathering allies and eventually formed a group called Clan Askani, with Askani meaning outsider. Her first disciple was also one of the first beings she encountered in this time period, a telepathic mutant mechanic named Blacksmith, who gave her the name Bright Lady. On several occasions, Rachel clashed with Apocalypse's High Counselor, Diamanda Nero, who at one point attempted to steal the power of the Phoenix and seemingly succeeded. However, even separated, Rachel was able to command the Phoenix to leave them both, sending the cosmic Firebird back into space. After that, as she grew older and the clan grew into a religious sisterhood, Rachel became known as Mother Askani, and preached that a chosen one known as the Dayspring, or the Askani Sun, would one day defeat Apocalypse. To fulfill this prophecy, she sent one of her agents back in time to retrieve her baby brother, Nathan, right after he was infected with Apocalypse's techno-organic virus, and brought him to their time. Fearing that her brother might succumb to the virus, Mother Askani had the infant Nathan cloned as a backup plan. However, that clone was stolen by Apocalypse and ultimately grew into a time-traveling terrorist known as Strife. Meanwhile, Rachel also brought Scott and Jean's minds forward in time, where they inhabited cloned bodies and raised Nathan as Slim and Red. In the end, Nathan survived by learning to use his burgeoning telekinetic powers to keep the virus at bay, and eventually grew into the grizzled time-traveling freedom fighter known as Cable. Suffice it to say, Cable battled Apocalypse in multiple time periods, including in the Marvel Age of Earth 616, his efforts likely helping ensure that the future he was raised in diverged to the alternate timeline, Reality 4935. Amidst all of these temporal shenanigans, it seems that the diverging timelines actually caused Rachel herself to diverge into two identical counterparts in the time stream shortly after replacing Captain Britain there. While one Rachel became Mother Askani, the other was thrown several billion years further into the future to a point in time where the Earth had been reduced to a lifeless husk. She allegedly landed so far in the future that at this point in time, any alternate Earths that still existed shared the same fate, meaning that every such timeline had effectively converged into a single reality referred to as the borderline. Rachel was found there by a cyborg named Gaunt, not to be confused with the Spider-Man villain of the same name. This Gaunt was an alien warlord from 2 billion years in the future, whose universal conquest claimed trillions of lives in his own timeline before he was defeated and banished to the borderline. Fortunately, Rachel's telepathic cries for help reached her brother Cable, who traveled there to retrieve her. Together, the two successfully defeated Gaunt and escaped back to Earth 616, where Rachel learned that she'd missed some things while she was gone, including the disbanding of Excalibur. Rachel also found that she had vague memories of her alternate life in the Askani timeline, despite not having lived through it herself. Furthermore, much like her Askani counterpart, this Rachel no longer wielded the power of the Phoenix. She attempted to step away from the world of superheroics and quietly attended a small-town college, but of course it was only a matter of time before she was drawn back into the fold. She helped Cable and his ally, Irene Merriweather, take down a subversive sisterhood and their leader, the Dark Mother, aka Finality, but was later captured by a mutant predator named Elias Bogan, who used her telepathic powers to enslave other mutants. She was ultimately rescued from that situation by a team of X-Men called the Extreme Sanction Executive Squad, or XSE, which included her old friend and former teammate Kitty Pryde. Meanwhile, it was around this time that Jean Grey was killed in a devastating battle with a mutant named Kuan Yin Zorn, who, long story short, was impersonating Magneto at the time. In the wake of this, Rachel adopted her mother's old codename Marvel Girl and rejoined the X-Men as a member of XSE. She also strongly disapproved of her father's relationship with Emma Frost and chose to take her mother's surname as well, becoming known as Rachel Grey for a time. Not long after that, Rachel traveled to England with two of her teammates, Bishop and Cannonball, intending on visiting Captain Britain and paying her respects for the death of his twin sister Betsy, known at the time as Psylocke. Don't worry, she got better later. While there, however, they were attacked by the hero-killing Psybiote known as the Fury, or rather a weaker duplicate of the Fury created by Captain Britain's reality-shaping brother Jamie Braddock. You can check out my video on Captain Britain's battles with Mad Jim Jaspers if you want to know just how dangerous the original Psybiote was. In any event, Rachel was instrumental in defeating this incarnation of the Fury, as she once again tapped into the power of the Phoenix Force and combined her abilities with those of Storm, Sage, Bishop, and Wolverine to compress the Fury into a micro-singularity and shunt it out of reality, into an isolated sidebar continuum. There was also an incident in which Rachel once again battled the mutant sorceress Celine Gallio, who previously targeted Rachel when she first arrived on Earth 616, and once again sought to enslave her. This time, however, armed with the power of the Phoenix, Rachel repelled Celine single-handedly. After that, despite the fact that Emma and Rachel's relationship got off to a rocky beginning, to say the least, they slowly buried the hatchet, and the following holiday season, Frost introduced Rachel to her maternal grandparents, John and Elaine Grey, who quickly accepted her without question. Unfortunately, there was later an incident in which the Shi'ar Empire sent death commandos to eliminate the Grey bloodline, and Rachel's newfound grandparents were both killed. The Shi'ar, of course, were fearful of the Phoenix and hoped to prevent the cosmic force from ever manifesting in a member of the Grey family again. Rachel, meanwhile, survived the attack, but her back was permanently branded with a genetic mark that would allow the Shi'ar to find her wherever she went. Enraged and guilt-ridden in the wake of this, Rachel started seeking professional psychiatric help, and when the Shi'ar attacked again, she used her power to repel them, but deliberately chose not to kill them, despite truly wanting to. By doing this, she hoped to honor the Grey name rather than bring more bad karma to it. She continued to operate as a member of the X-Men and accompanied the team on a number of exploits, including an adventure into space in which she romanced an alien descendant of a previous Phoenix host named Corvus Rookshire, joined the space pirate group the Starjammers, and contributed to the rebellion against the Shi'ar Emperor Vulcan. She later returned to Earth to find that a schism between Wolverine and Cyclops had essentially split the X-Men in two, and Rachel chose to become a teacher at the Jean Grey School for Higher Learning, a mutant academy run by Wolverine. We don't really have time this week to get into those exploits in more detail, but since then she's utilized a number of different costumes and codenames at different points in time, including Marvel Girl, Prestige, and Askani. She lost access to the Phoenix Force again, her mother came back to life, and Rachel has been a member of various mutant teams, including a version of X-Factor during the Krakoa era. In the midst of all this, she started a romantic relationship with Betsy Braddock, who in recent years has taken on her brother's former role as Captain Britain. On one adventure, Betsy found a war wolf puppy, which Rachel then adopted and named Amazing Baby. Most recently, both Rachel and Betsy have operated as members of the newest incarnation of X-Force, so you can check out that book if you want to see her latest appearances. In the meantime, that's all I've got for you this week, and so thank you so much for watching this video. If you enjoyed it, be sure to leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and share it on your favorite social media. As always, the issues referenced in this video are listed in the description below if you would like to read them for yourself, as well as links to other places you can find me. Let me give a special shout out to all of my Patreon and Ko-fi supporters, Twitch subscribers, and YouTube members who help make the channel possible. By signing up for any ongoing amount on any of these platforms, you'll get your name in these special thanks here, but Patreon is the one that helps determine what topics get covered on the channel via monthly polls. And hey, if you made it all the way to the end of the video, let me tell you a secret. I need options to populate those polls with, so if there's anything you want to hear about, let me know in the comments. But that is indeed all I have for you this week, and so until next time, true believers, Excelsior!